Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 1646. The topic is Q&A and the title is, Why Did Thor Tear His Pec? Oh no. So if you don't know who Thor is, I'm talking about Hafthor Bjornsson, who is nicknamed Thor. You might know him from being the Mountain on Game of Thrones. Really huge fella. So he used to compete in World's Strongest Man. That's how I kind of first got introduced to him. Now he's 6'9", I think 400 and some pounds at his biggest. I think it was 440 or something like that as his biggest. So very large, very big dude. And just this past weekend, he tried to set the world record for powerlifting total. I don't know if he thought he was necessarily going to get all the way over 2,500, but I knew he was planning for a big meet, and I believe he had posted on social media, and his trainer from Australia posted that they were planning on trying to break the world record at least by the end of this year. So he competed, but unfortunately he tore his pec. So he didn't even finish the meet. He did his squat. He missed his top squat due to depth. They came out for the bench press, and he tore his pec, and it was just done day. No point in deadlifting with a torn pec. So it was, I'm sure, without a doubt, a big bummer for him. And two or three of my clients, actually three, I don't know why I said 2 to 3, three of my clients reached out and just said, hey, did you see this? And they sent me videos and stuff, so it was kind of cool. And then one of them asked, hey, what would your opinion be of why he tore his pec? And I was like, well, that's fun. It's a huge honor, huge blessing, and I feel very just privileged when somebody asks my opinion about stuff, so that's really cool. So I wanted to make a podcast. Now, I want to give a little bit of background about Thor, because I think that's just going to be helpful, especially if people don't actually know him. And then it'll also set up why I think he tore his pec. So he is, as I said, was a World's Strongest Man competitor, but he actually quit World's Strongest Man to do boxing. And then he came back after boxing and has been coming back into powerlifting. And I'm assuming it's, he competed at the highest levels of World's Strongest Man, won the Arnold Classic 3 years in a row. So maybe he doesn't feel like he has a lot to prove there. I'm sure, I would assume that I still would want to win World's Strongest Man titles. But he might feel he wants to do powerlifting first and then maybe come back and do World's Strongest Man. I'm not really sure. I don't talk to the man. So I don't know what his thinking is. But it also makes sense that if you're trying to rebuild your strength, powerlifting is kind of like basic lifts, big, heavy, compound, stationary lifts that you would rebuild tissue size, rebuild strength size, and then you could go back to doing, strongman type stuff. So in his early years, he was actually a basketball player, and he had an ankle injury and some surgeries that's the reason why he had to stop playing basketball. He had wanted to go to the NBA, and being 6'9", certainly is a possibility. So unfortunately he got hurt. He had been lifting for basketball. He was then trying to figure out what to do. He was doing bodybuilding training, but he was at a gym in Iceland owned by Magnus von Magnusson, and he's good God, one of the World's Strongest Man, Hall of Fame kind of people. And he saw Hafthor and was like, dude, you're 6'9", strong as hell, you should do strongman. So Hafthor started training, weight training. I believe he started somewhere around 2006, 2007. And he was getting a lot of strength, getting a lot of size, and he ended up competing in his first World's Strongest Man in 2011. That's pretty awesome. 4 or 5 years of training, and all of a sudden, boom, you're one of the world's strongest men. Ridiculous. And then he actually competed all the way through to 2020, so 2020. So he competed for 9 years at the highest levels, just, as awesome and as strong as you could be. And then in 2020, he stopped strongman and wanted to compete in boxing. Now, to compete in boxing, you have to be drug-free. So to get a professional card, pro card in boxing, become a professional boxer, you have to be drug tested. So he had to come off all performance-enhancing drugs, and to be a world's strongest man, he was most likely using quite a bit. So he had to come off all PEDs, and he wasn't doing his heavy lifts anymore. There was no need to do 1,000-pound yoke, to be good at boxing. So he started training like a boxer. Now, boxers, I've trained MMA athletes. You can still do heavy squats, heavy deadlifts, and there's absolute benefits to staying strong, but they're not going to be doing, near maximal efforts to the point where they risk injury. And there's a point in which getting stronger doesn't have any more benefit. So, for example, if you can get an MMA athlete from a 225-pound squat to a 315-pound squat, okay, that's pretty reasonable. That's probably going to get them more strength, to be able to have better leverages, better foundation to their movements, and just be able to have more control over other competitors. However, if they squat 405, getting them to a 500-pound squat, you could argue that that's not going to have as much benefit, and it's actually going to present more of a risk than it would have benefit. So he didn't need to maintain the crazy heavy lifting that he would have done for strongman, and he didn't have all the PEDs, which not only make you stronger, but they also impact protein synthesis. So when you take certain types of performance-enhancing drugs, it improves your rate of recovery. So your everything basically heals faster. So that's one of the benefits is you can create bigger muscles because you recover faster and have greater protein synthesis, which is conversion of protein to new muscle tissue, for example. So his recovery would have been significantly lower, and he wasn't lifting as much as he used to lift. So he had quite a bit of time away from things that would have been protecting and maintaining his underlying structure. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later on, is our connective tissue. So when we lift weights, not only do our bones thicken, by the way, that's how you work on people with bone density problems, your muscles get bigger, but also your connective tissue gets thicker. When you stop lifting and you stop the PEDs that were helping to push it to higher levels, you're going to have a reduction in all that. So he lost a lot of muscle tissue, and he would have lost some thickness and strength in his connective tissue. So he took 2 years, like 2.5 years, completely off. Now, when he decided to come back to sports, strength sports, he decided to come back with powerlifting. Now, his first ever meet he ever did, back in 2011, okay? He was 22 years old, and he had a 2,050-pound raw total. Absolute just bonkers, because that's stupid strong. And to be that at 22, it's like, just screw you, buddy. It's not that I'm jealous or anything. So, but to have a 2,000-pound total at 22 is just insane. That's so awesome. Congratulations to him. And then he did another powerlifting meet in 2018. So for 7 years, he trained basically doing strongman stuff, which, if you're not familiar with strongman competitions, they do overhead press significantly more than they would do bench press. They almost never usually bench press, like a barbell bench press. It's very rare. It's a supplemental lift, if at all, for strongman. They're going to be mostly doing their pressing work overhead, because that's what's used most in competition. So he wouldn't have been primarily focusing on trying to build his bench as much as possible in 7 years, but it would have gotten up a little bit, and so would have squat and deadlift. So in 2018, he had a 2,425-pound total. I think that was like the 5th best total at the time. So crazy strong, stupid awesome. So he put on almost 400 pounds on his total in 7 years. And again, that wasn't direct focus. So it wasn't like he trained 7 years specifically to do that. That was an indirect effect from strongman training. But like we said, he went away from heavy lifting, went away from the PEDs, and when he came back in 2022, so just last fall, he put up a 2,100 total. So it dropped quite a bit. It dropped essentially 300 pounds, and that would be, a lot of it was due to he had a lot less muscle tissue. So he had lost a lot of muscle by coming off drugs and stopped lifting to do the boxing. And then it would just be kind of reacclimating the nervous system, getting the body back to being able to handle and manage the heavy weight loads. So what he did was he came back, put up a really good total. 2,100 is nothing to sneeze at. That's freaking amazing already. But he had planned to, sometime in 2023, he said that he wanted to break the all-time world record. Now, the world record for raw is 2,540 pounds. These numbers are stupid, by the way. It is rare. Like, it's hard to get a 1,500-pound total in powerlifting. It's extremely rare to even see like an 1,800-pound total. Over 2,000 is incredibly rare, and obviously 2,500 is incredibly rare. It's like one person. So, but that's where he wanted to go to. So he was hoping to put 400 pounds on his total in like 1 year. Whereas he put 400 pounds on his total across 7 years before. So has he put on 400 pounds on his total before? Yes. But it was 7 years of work, 7 years of heavy lifting to maintain and grow his connective tissue, 7 years of maintaining and growing his muscle tissue. It was 7 years with PEDs and heavy lifting where his body was able to acclimate, and those weight loads were normal for his body. Now he wanted to put on 400 pounds in 1 year. Absolutely insane. So, why I think Thor tore his pec. Now, who am I? It's up to you to decide what my opinion is worth. I have trained people for like strongman competitions. We had some Arnold strongman competitors who used to train out of the gym, which was really fun, exciting to talk with them. I've trained people for strongman competitions. I've trained people for powerlifting. I mean, I've helped people get elite totals a gajillion times. So I am very familiar with this world. So I do think that my opinion has some merit. Otherwise, I wouldn't be sharing it. But my opinion is he tore his pec for two main reasons. Number one, connective tissue overload. So he loaded the connective tissue of his pec greater than what it could handle. Obviously, and that's not like, it tore. So that's a pretty good guess on my part. But what I think the overload came from was the combination of the 2.5 years away from heavy lifting, 2.5 years away from PEDs, the support and the purpose and the reason and everything he would have had that created the connective tissue he had before was gone. So the connective tissue he had before, in order to support all of his heavy lifting, had gone away. He wasn't doing the heavy lifting. He wasn't doing the PEDs. Now, his nutrition would have come down quite a bit because he was trying to cut weight for boxing, because having too much muscle mass just kills your aerobic conditioning. So the muscles just use up too much oxygen. So he was in a major deficit. He took on running. He was doing basically everything you would do to tear connective tissue off your body. Like basically to just reduce the strength of it. If you want to take your connective tissue and make it weaker, you would not lift heavy weights. You would come off PEDs. You would go in a caloric deficit. You would take on high non-weight bearing activity, like such as running. So he did all of the things that you would do to thin out connective tissue. Then he's like, okay, I'm going to put all of it back on in a year. No. No. Just no. And that was the problem. He tried to lift too much too quickly. And there needed to be time to rebuild that base. Now, did he give time to it? Hell yeah, the guy's not an idiot. The coach is a freaking genius. So, were they maybe skirting on the edge and they just got caught? Yes. I'm not saying anything that they don't know, but it's kind of like Monday morning quarterback, that kind of thing. Is I can look at it and say, oh, you didn't give enough time. There's no markers for this. There's no like set in stone rules that anybody can follow. It's just a big fat guessing game. That's what it is. And they just got caught in this guess. Could they have guessed correctly and he moved, some micromillimeter into a bad position, then that caused the problem? Yes, absolutely. That can absolutely happen. So they could have done everything like 99.9% right, but they went that 0.1% over. He got in a bad position and then boom. So what could have contributed to there being a possible bad position that could cause a pec tear would be he had that time away from heavy lifting, he had the time away from PEDs, but he wanted to put on all the muscle, all the strength as fast as he possibly could, and maybe it went a little too fast. The second thing is he doesn't actually have an extensive background in barbell bench training. Yes, he has competed in powerlifting before. He's been lifting, for 14, coming on, 15, 16, 17 years? He's been lifting for a long ass time. But his main sport was an overhead press dominant sport, strongman. Did he bench from time to time? Absolutely, of course. Yes, I understand that. But he would not have spent a lot of time exploring his truest maximal 1 rep effort of bench press. It would have been he dipped into it from time to time, dipped out of it from time to time. There wouldn't have been this insane, intense amount of time to where the tissues of the chest, the degree in which they are stretched to do a bench press is significantly different than the degree in which they are stretched to do an overhead press. So he didn't spend as much time stretching the fibers of the chest to their maximal capacity under weight load in order to strengthen where the muscles connect into the connective tissue, and in order to strengthen the connective tissue by placing it under maximal load, under maximal stretch. Since it's not something he spent as much time doing, there would have been weakness within those tissues that wouldn't have shown up in overhead press movements, that wouldn't have shown up in even incline bench movements or dumbbell variation movements. If you watch somebody do dumbbell chest press, very rarely do they lower their hands low enough to where if the handles of the dumbbells were connected, that like a bar, that it would actually touch their chest. Most people do dumbbell chest presses where the hands are still a good 2 to 3 inches higher than the chest line. So even a dumbbell chest press doesn't stretch your chest the same degree in which a barbell chest press does. So if he hasn't been doing maximal, his main focus hasn't been barbell bench press, then he's not going to have spent a significant amount of time in that stretched, loaded position. So the people I train for strongman, we do bench press from time to time, absolutely. And some of them actually want bench press to be amazing, so we spend even more time doing it. But it's not their main focus, and they certainly don't spend as much time doing bench press as a power lifter would do bench press. So those are the two factors that I believe led to why he tore his pec. Is the connective tissue overload, obviously because it tore, but being that as a result from time away from heavy lifting, time away from PEDs, and he was trying to put on too much weight, too much strength, too fast. And the second reason was it wasn't a movement that he spent enough time in to build those little nuancy, small, extreme stretch fibers and places in the muscle connective tissue areas. Now, these mistakes happen a lot. So I do a lot of injury rehab for people, like corrective exercise therapy. Somebody hurts themselves. They know somebody who I helped, and then they reach out and said, hey, can you help me like that person? So I love it because I get a chance to kind of give somebody back the life that they wanted, but got taken from them due to an injury. So I love being able to help people with injuries. But that's not uncommon, that people try to do too much too quickly, and they're trying to do weird movements, something they don't normally do, and they get hurt. So in bodybuilding, I train people for bodybuilding shows as well. And in bodybuilding, it's hilarious because there's a common idea, a common theme that you don't help with anything outside of the gym. You go to the gym, you lift heavy weights, then you go home and you do nothing. Like if a friend asks you to move, you tell them to go screw themselves. You don't do anything. You don't pick stuff up and move stuff. Because when you're in the gym, you're damaging your tissues to the edge of what you know they can recover from. Then if you go and you try to do something, you get hurt. So Lee Priest, famously, he was trying to carry a TV and he tore his bicep carrying a TV. The dude can barbell curl 225. The TV wasn't the problem. It was that he was in the gym. He beat himself up to the edge of recovery. He then went and tried to pick up a TV. I remember Branch Warren, I think he tore his tricep because he slipped. He was wearing socks going down a all-wood staircase. He slipped and tried to catch himself and tore his tricep off the bone. How depressing and sad is that? So in bodybuilding world, it's very common and it's well understood that you're trying to beat everything up to the edge of what it can handle and then recover for by the next workout. You don't get a chance to try to just add in a bunch of random crap. So if Thor's, if he's used to training for strongman and they throw in this brand new weird lift, yeah, it's going to cause problems. Now, I understand in his case he did practice for powerlifting, but you, the listener, if you try to do weird stuff that you don't normally do, you have a high risk of injury. I had a friend I helped compete in a aesthetic competition one time, and we were, I think, 4 weeks or 3 weeks away from the competition. He was trying to run with his niece. They were sprinting in the backyard, and he tore his hamstring. And I'm like, why the hell are you sprinting? What are you doing? You're not like you're a bodybuilder. What are you doing? So I understand it, but that happens a lot. People try weird stuff that they're not ready for, and they get hurt. The other thing like people do is they try to push their weights too fast in training. If you get stronger and you try to jump in weight too quickly, you hurt yourself. Now, people have had massive strength jumps. Now, obviously it can be all of a sudden they introduced, PEDs like steroids, drugs, whatever. But also it can come from when I start working with people like my clients, all of a sudden they have a healthy nutrition plan that they're actually consistent with. They have a better training program that they're actually consistent with. Maybe we get them in better positions. We understand a couple technique issues. So what they used to be able to lift before, maybe they maxed out at 225 pounds in a squat. I show them a couple positioning things, and all of a sudden they're at 265. Or you have somebody that's squatted 405, and then within 4 weeks, all of a sudden they're at 445. So strength jumps can happen from a lot of reasons. But when the strength jumps happen, it doesn't mean you need to load the damn tissues to their max. Muscles heal and grow, like get thicker, faster than connective tissue does. So although your muscles can move the weight, it doesn't necessarily mean that your connective tissue is ready to move the weight. And our muscles have much more sensitive pain kind of signals, whereas our connective tissue does not. Usually you don't feel connective tissue until something bad already happened. You're doing something and you're like, oh shit, what was that? And it's like, oh no, something bad happened. We don't really usually get a warning from our connective tissue as much as we do feel what's going on with our muscles. So it's common that people do get hurt. They try to jump too much weight too quickly, which is what I think Thor did. He tried to come back into all the drugs, all the lifting, and wanting to set a world record in powerlifting a little too fast. So I have clients that are super crazy strong, and they thankfully listen to me, but they have a natural desire to move faster than they should with weight jumps. And I've had to preach a little bit and get them to slow down and see the bigger picture. I understand when I'm the athlete, I want to try for every pound on that bar. But when I'm the coach, I'm like, you don't need every pound on that bar. What are we lifting for? Are we lifting right now to just see where our weaknesses are? Once we can see where they are, let's just focus on them and let's come back and, test everything again in a couple weeks, maybe 8, 12 weeks. We don't need to go to a 1 rep max. We just need to go heavy enough to see where the weaknesses are. So that's something I think of as a coach, is to pick my risks wisely. So when I have competitive clients, I am very, very, very protective of when we take risks. Very protective. It's not uncommon, if you're one of my clients, that we almost never set PRs. Well, we set PRs a lot. We never aim for maximal effort, go full send, 10 RPE, crazy PRs in the training. We save all that stuff for powerlifting meets or competitions. So I've had, clients come, we'll train, and maybe they could do a 500-pound squat, but their previous best squat is 470. I'm like, okay, well, let's try 480, 485 first. And they're like, yeah, but I think I can do 500. I'm like, you probably could, but we don't need to. If we go to 485, it'll give us a chance to stimulate the body above what you've done before. It'll give us a chance to see if there's any small weaknesses that kind of show themselves. It gives us a less risky, more protected chance to progress. So we're better off doing the 485 than we are the 500. If we want a 500 in a meet, let's just wait till the damn meet to hit the 500. Let's work up to like 485 for a double before we try the 500. It's better to be safe and to be smart with when you take your risks. So you have to pick your risks wisely. And the other thing I think of in training is to keep momentum. It's long-term beneficial to set small PRs just frequently. Like maybe every 8 weeks I want to hit 5 pounds more. Maybe every 12 weeks, 5 pounds more. And you do that every other month, PR. Every other month, PR. Every other month, PR. You know, it's not exciting to say, okay, I trained for 8 weeks and I got 5 pounds in my squat. But if we look at, okay, it's 5 pounds more, my knee didn't cave in as much, my hips and the bar raised at the same time rather than me getting folded over. So I was able to put 5 more pounds in the bar and it looked better. We don't prioritize or value how it looks enough. It's the almighty weight on the bar, you know. We need to pay more attention to and value more so how a lift looks. Does it look smooth and efficient, or does it look like you almost died? If it looks like you almost died, train for 8 to 12 weeks just to make it look like you didn't almost die. Don't try to add more weight on the bar. A lot of people are like, oh, I survived it, let me move up. No, God, no. You want to make it look like you do the lift and then someone goes, and like, say you start unloading the bar and you're like, what the hell? You just warming up? Like, it excites me and it's fun when I have clients send me videos and they're like, yeah, my friend said we should go up 10 pounds. I'm like, yeah, that's why your friend isn't your coach. We're not going to do that. This looked amazing. Looks super clean. It has never looked this clean before. That is a PR. Let's keep working on our weaknesses and let's keep moving up. Maintain momentum. Small PRs consistently. And pick your risks wisely. And the third tip is to focus on recovery as much as you focus on everything else. So as much as you're focusing on weight on the bar, focus on recovery. Focus on calories, protein, meal timing, hydration, sleep, stress management. Focus on the things that support your body's ability to adapt to the stimulus you present. When you're in training, you present a stimulus for change. How you eat, hydrate, sleep, and manage stress allows your body to make that change. Whatever you do in the gym is just a push for more. How your body actually fulfills that more is food, hydration, sleep, and stress management. So as much as you're focusing on adding 5 pounds to the bar, you should be focusing as much and arguably a lot more on food, hydration, sleep, and stress management. Okay? So that's why I think Thor tore his pec. Connective tissue overload, too much time away from heavy lifting, too much time away from PEDs, trying to put on the weight too much too fast. And it was in a position that he has some training background on, but not an overly extensive training background. How we can learn from Thor tearing his pec is 3 things. Pick your risks wisely. Don't go up to all-out maxes unless you're in competitions or, some major reason like that. Take small little PRs and maintain momentum in your training. And then focus on recovery as much as you focus on progression. Awesome. Okay, so that's a little bit of my background, knowledge, and thoughts, and I hope it was informative, interesting in some way. So take what you can from it, and I hope it helps. If you have any questions, shoot me an email at brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like our podcast, please share it. The more people we share it with, the more people can help. Thank you to those who donate to support the podcast financially. There is a high hosting cost every year, a bunch of different places I have to pay money to, so the podcast can be at those places. So I appreciate the financial support to help lessen that burden. If you want to donate, you can do so on our website, www.brutalirongym.com. Even just $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever you can give. Super helpful, very meaningful. I greatly appreciate everybody who does that. And then if you like the information we share in our podcast, you can always find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us under the name Brutal Iron Gym on Instagram and YouTube. If you do that, I greatly appreciate it because it helps build the numbers and that builds the reach as well. So I really appreciate when people do that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And then as always, I hope this was helpful and thank you for listening.